Just gonna test some of the brushes out here. Yep. Cool. Well, hey everybody. Cool that you joined in to watch this live draw. I'm gonna focus on thumbnails today and the power behind thumbnails. And thumbnails is basically small drawings. So a thumbnail is linked to how big you draw it, basically. So a thumbnail should be a small sketch. It doesn't really matter what kind of resolution you use. I use my go-to resolution, maybe like 6,000 pixels wide or 5, or you know, the resolution I want to have on the finished artwork. But as long as we can zoom out, so you can draw really small. In the beginning, that's sort of the key with the thumbnail, to establish the main part of the drawing, the composition, the framing. So if you draw like a character here, you know, standing there, and then there might be another character looking at him standing here. Maybe this one character is holding a box. Maybe he's fired. He's gonna have to move out of the office. This is his boss. So the idea is that it's quick, right? And if I was at this level, I wouldn't, you see how sketchy they are? I wouldn't draw it that sketchy if I was zoomed in like this. So the key here, keep it small, because then the whole composition, the whole drawing reads a lot quicker, a lot better. That's the artist's way of stepping back from the painting, looking at it from a distance, right? And flipping is also important. So thumbnails, I would say, is probably the most important part of making any artwork. If the thumbnail sucks, you can always do a new one. And part of the thumbnail is to not spend too much time on the thumbnail. So I said thumbnail a lot. I'm going to continue saying thumbnail a lot. But I'm going to spend about 15 minutes per thumbnail, which will at least make us be able to do 3. And then some chit chat in between, and you know, just ask questions and you know, whatever. I have these brushes that I will use, basically the ones you see now. Maybe not all of them, maybe all of them. And you see that a lot of my brushes have not just, you know, like this is the rulle I'm using now, but it also has this nice texture. And if I tap with it, it looks different. So I like the brushes that can do more than one thing. So the same with, you know, a brush like this one. It looks like this if I paint with it. It has a bit more stripe if I'm lighter. If I tap, it has this nice little, you know, grainy, dotty texture. So that's a lot of my brushes are like that, you know, stripy, but I can also have this nice texture. So let's say I want to make a tree, for example, I can tap out around with this brush and then switch to my rulle brush, for example, and just make the trunk of the tree. So I like these efficient brushes where you know, you can fiddle about with the one brush a lot. And that's also why my 3 main brushes are these ones here, the airbrush, the round brush, and the rulle. And to sort of finish my quick menu setup here. It's flip horizontally, drawing assist, and then alpha lock. And this is the newest iPad, so on the Apple Pencil I have switching between eraser and brush when I tap on the pencil. So that's my, if you see suddenly I'm going from this brush to this brush and you didn't see me switch between them, it's because I used the quick menu. So I'll try to keep you updated on which brush I'm using when. Alrighty. So the first thing I often do, I'm going to do environment sketches, thumbnails. And what I usually do then is that I make a perspective. Regardless if I am drawing something very much in perspective, let's say it's a forest. The forest doesn't necessarily have that much perspective, but I like to set up my perspective regardless, because my perspective is my point of view, my framing, like kind of like where the horizontal line is. So this is a 2-point perspective now. And I'm gonna skip the 3rd point because it's not a very, how should I say, it's not a very, the diagonal lines, or the vertical lines, sorry, they can also be straight. And then if you like to have a 3rd point, you can actually do it when your drawing is finished. You can transform the vertical lines a bit. So I'm going to stick to this for now. I'm making my perspective lines black, and I don't want it to be too visible in my viewport or in on my canvas. And I'm going to try to stay on this size. It's almost the size of a credit card. That's basically, so I might go in here, or if I do a character or so, I might go a bit further in, but a key point here is to stay zoomed out. That's sort of the whole idea, because if you drew on a small sketchbook when you were younger, or if you were used to drawing analog on a smaller scale, you know it takes a lot less time to draw a sketch on a small piece of paper than on a big piece of paper, because even if you decide to go rough, you're still gonna start doing detail early on if the canvas is big. So staying small. So the first or the second thing I do after perspective is that I'm lowering my value on the background, because I don't like to work on white. White and black are the 2 most powerful values. It's good to save them a bit for something a bit more special than the background. So even here I can kind of see the 3D space because of the perspective lines. It's already helping a lot. And a trick I do, we're gonna do like more foresty landscape type stuff on the first sketch here, and then we might go a bit more urban after this. So a trick I often use is that I'm just putting out some random, this will be my ground, but I'm drawing it from a top view right now, and I'm using both you know, really detailed brushes and, you know, just tapping a bit here. I can also erase on this, but you have to imagine this right now to be the top view looking straight down. So it has nothing to do with the perspective right now, but I want to squeeze this into perspective to help me out a little with just laying down some detail that is already in perspective. So just maybe something like this. And now I transform that. So I touch hold to grab the whole line here. Touch hold to move up, and then just touch and move to, you know, to scale, to get that. You know, I can look about now in my sketch here, like which is the part that I actually want to have in the drawing. So already you kind of feel the perspective on the ground, which is great, which is the point of this. So just something like that. It's already kind of detailed, which helps me a lot with, I made a new layer now, so I have the background there, new layer on top. So I want to make some trees now, so I kind of stick to the same value. Maybe let's pull up some trees over here. So I'm using the rule brush right now, just mucking about with some different lines. And remember, this is on a separate layer here, so I can always erase the bottom part, you know, to decide where they are in the depth. And I want to make like another brush, the drawing brush. This is nice because it can be thick and thin according to how hard I press. So I'm just fiddling in some detail. Some more lines here and some less lines there. And then I switch to maybe this one, Fury Bushes, to get some of that, you know, nice, the leaves and stuff. So that will be, that's okay for now on that side. You know, I established that this is part of a forest or something. And maybe I will, sometimes with the new pen it kind of switches to eraser because I'm moving my arm, but then I just have to switch back. So just adding a little, maybe some rock. I forgot to start my timer. I want to make 15 minutes. So let's say that I used 4 minutes for now. I'm going to count down from 11 minutes now, just on my watch. Because, at least for me, when I'm starting to draw, I lose track of time. So it's really nice to have that timer, just to help you out with, you know, seeing if you spent this or that much time. Switching to the stripe brush here now, it's very nice with the grassy stuff, grassy feel. So maybe a little grass sticking out, because I'm picking the value where I'm a little different values from my canvas. I'm just painting it straight up from there. And I can always now, so I have a little part of the ground in one layer and then the rest, and I want to alpha lock that now, which is also on my quick menu, straight down. And then maybe use the airbrush, go darker. So even though I go maybe almost to black here, I'm not going to paint black, I'm just going to go darker, just to get a little darker value. So it's still kind of far away from black. So it's kind of a mid-ground stuff here. I want to have a layer at the bottom as well. That will be my shadow pass, sort of. You know, this is kind of detail on the ground, and I can also alpha lock that and go maybe darker on that if I want, especially closer to the camera. And then at the bottom, here comes more like the shadow stuff in, because the forest over here will create shadow on that side. Ambient Occlusion is a term I really like. It's a 3D term in case of like rendering shadows, and it's all the soft shadows that will just naturally occur. Right now it's a soft lighting situation in our scene, yeah, we'll see if we're gonna put in the sun or something, but when you have the soft shadow, every part in your scene that's gonna obstruct or get in the way of the light will make soft shadows. It's kind of like an overcast situation. So I made a new layer now, and it's going to be behind what we already drew, but I'm putting it on top of the shadow area. It could, you know what? It can be at the total bottom. So I want to have maybe some hills or something. Maybe a mountain coming down there. Not sure about that, but let's try it. I'm also erasing, you know, to figure out like is there a small hill in front of that mountain, just to make it a bit more interesting. So part of a few things that are great with thumbnails is, number one, it's quick, which gives a lot of new advantages, like you didn't waste a lot of time creating it. So if it does suck and you need to start over again, you only spent, well, let's say the 15 minutes then. So I rather make, if I have a whole, let's say 8-hour workday and I need to make one drawing, I rather use the first hour to make 4 thumbnails and then choose which one I want to continue with. Okay, so we have a little mountain here, maybe even some trees sticking out here. Also for scale, you know, we have the close-up trees. These are further away trees, and you need to have, in case of value, the mountain is dark, so some of the trees in front of the mountain will have, you see the tree trunks bright on dark, but then when it's in front of the background, it's the opposite. And this is very often how I start out a painting, even if it's going to be just a thumbnail or if it's going to be a finished painting which I detail. This is a great way to start. So here I make brighter, so it's like a little forest edge before the mountain. Just going to erase a little on that mountain just to make it a bit more interesting shaped. So I have 5 minutes left now, so I already sort of established the environment. I'm gonna go Fury brush, that's good. And then here, just behind these trees here, gonna make some more leaves and stuff, because now this is behind the tree trunks, so that's like a second layer. To me now it's in the same sort of forest chunk, but It's nice that not all the leaves and the tree trunks have the same value, so these are a bit brighter because they're further away. And I'm keeping my layers in order in case of depth to a certain degree, but in the thumbnail I'm also not bothering too much, being very picky about it. So maybe I'll draw something that should be further away on a close-up layer, but it's always doable to move that later on, you know. It's not like the trees I've drawn in front of the mountain is on the same layer as the mountain, but it's still going to be a quick sketch, so it's not really a big deal to separate that later on. All right, and maybe we even see some water. The thing now with the horizon line being a nice advantage is that if I make a new layer at the bottom here, and I just fill this with a value like that, and then I transform that just down to the horizontal line. So that's where naturally the water would be. Just gonna zoom in just to get that on the horizon line. There we go. A trick to zoom in and out in the middle of a transform. If I zoom now, I'm just gonna transform that. I just go to warp, then I can use my 2 fingers. So that's a quick little trick right there. But now you see that it's obstructing my the rest of the paint. So I need to fill that, and because it's so detailed, I'm not gonna use the typical way of you know, selecting the negative space. I'm just gonna paint now a totally white, so I see it. So I'm just filling this now with white on a separate layer. So that should sort of, you know, fill in. And now I pick the background color which I want on this white layer, alpha lock and fill. So now when I turn on the water, it should be in the right depth, you know, it should be behind. And there's a few holes in this layer here, but I can always fix that. Turning on the water. Like that. 1 minute left. It's always a bit quick when, oh, wrong layer. Alpha lock. It's smart to alpha lock anything you don't want to draw, you know, by accident in. Alpha lock it. 50 seconds. I'll show you a neat trick. I actually want it a bit brighter here. It's like the sun is, maybe not the sun, but at least a little bit brighter area. Maybe using my curves to lower the brightness on the foreground a bit more. Also going back to my shadow layer here, just to get a better separation in case of value on the close-up stuff, and then further into the scene stuff. Time is out now, but I want to show you a few tricks here. So that's kind of one thumbnail on 15 minutes. So the idea is to, you know, at this level I can tell is this something that works well, or should I just make a new one? So you sort of lost 15 minutes if you want to look at it like that. I I think that you kind of gained a good sketch rather than lost 15 minutes. Even if you wanted to decide to go on with another sketch, that this isn't the one that's gonna win the becoming detailed, you still made a lot of decisions here where you became smarter and know what not to repeat, or in your next sketch you can decide what stuff to keep, what stuff not to keep, right? So another little trick I like to use is kind of like the same as I did with the ground in the beginning, to push into perspective with clouds. So let's say that I'm picking just white here, new layer on top, and I'm just gently drawing some stripes and stuff in that layer. Not too detailed here. This is going to be clouds, so we don't want as much detail as on the ground. And then I blur it. So I Gaussian blur it here at this point. And a cool thing about that is that when I now put it into perspective, first gonna just move it to the right area over the water. When I now put it into perspective, it's gonna get softer closest to the camera, because when I squeeze it in detail like this, the blurred part will be more blurred closer to us, right? And here you see a nice advantage about which part do I want to see, you know? And I can also flip it this way if I liked it, you know, I kind of like this stripes part, maybe something like that. You can always move and then scale down if you want it to be like super crazy perspective. But maybe something like that. So that's a quick way of getting some nice cloud shapes. So putting stuff in perspective, even though they're not, you know, perspective line food, you know, like buildings and stuff with straight lines, man-made stuff. Stuff is still gonna be in perspective. And the last thing I would do in a drawing is something that shows scale, like trees show scale. So to a certain degree, you could just keep it like that. But nothing shows scale as well as a human. So I'm just drawing this on it doesn't need to be detailed or anything. Just to have like maybe he's out traveling. Some sort of hat. So I'm drawing him bigger now. It's not going to be this big. Or it can be, but I like to draw people a bit bigger. And then maybe if I do transform now, the transform gizmo, the square around with the dots, it's a bit too in my way, I feel, because it's obstructing how it looks. So what I often do is I just place a dot in the corners. So when I do transform now, it's further away from the character. It's easier to see just the character in your scene. And now you can decide how big it's going to be. So he could be that big, you know, like he was originally. But then the forest is, you know, regular, not that big. But if I scale him really down, And he also needs to be a bit more scale like that. Now the forest is much bigger. And also, of course, depending on where I put him on the ground, you know. So maybe here, or maybe standing there. Somewhere where his silhouette is showing. So, okay. Just gonna group all this. This is one sketch now. The only thing that isn't in part of that sketch is the background. So sometimes you might want to have that background color, fill it in a new layer, and have that being part of your, you know, whoops. Have that be part of your group here. Just gonna do that and then this. So now whatever I do with the background, it's not gonna matter on this sketch. So that's thumbnail number 1. For the next one, maybe we're gonna switch up the perspective a bit. Let's do that. Going to edit perspective. Still a bit more urban thing. Maybe we just have a 1-point perspective. That's not something you see me do very often. It doesn't mean that it has to be totally in the center. You can have it a bit off like that, you know, if you want to. But yeah, I'm just gonna put it there. So it's a bit lower, a bit to the left, but mainly in the center. And just to show you, like on the previous sketch, what I meant with not putting in the 3rd point is that I can now transform. If I want that to be like this, I can do that, you know, after. Then you get the 3rd point. It's not that obvious now on a very organic sketch, but if it was buildings, you would really see that the 3rd point kicked in. It might be a bit distorting on your content, but yeah, you can just scale it a little how you want it. Okay, so new sketch. I'm gonna actually start the clock before I sketch now, so 15 minutes and counting. And I'm gonna go to my rull brush. I have a new layer on top of the group. Switching on drawing assist. I want this to be kind of like a back alley. So even if the perspective is not something, a 1-point perspective I use very often, what I'm gonna draw now is comfort zone stuff, something urban, a back alley. Maybe we even make it nighttime. So I'm just chunking out, just chiseling in and out, you know, using the eraser when needed to carve away. So it's always both ways, you know, not just adding, but also erasing. And I'm also going to turn perspective assist very much on and off, because if you keep it on all the time, it's going to give a very sterile kind of look to your painting. So it's great with especially stuff with that is kind of organic, with like a back alley where there's a lot of stuff lying about, cords hanging, tubes, wires, you need to break up the lines so they're not all perfectly straight or perfect perspective. But I do add just lines here and there just to help me show that perspective. Maybe there's a bigger chunk, maybe this is like some close-up. I'm gonna have maybe like a overhang here. Maybe we also need to put in something recognizable, you know, like if you see these alleyways, often there's always like a window or a door or, you know, something you recognize very easily, or like a ventilation air conditioned thing. And if they weren't there, it's almost hard to tell what the hell you're looking at. Like if you see a picture from just a trash ground where it's only trash lying about, that's a difficult thing to draw. Even if it's just rubble lying over each other, there's no, you know, it's almost unrecognizable because everything is like torn to pieces. That's really difficult to draw actually, because it's so just detail, but almost, you know, hard to tell what each part is. So erasing a bit again, just to see where that line actually would go in perspective. The perspective tool in Procreate is fantastic. I'm not sure what I would do without it now actually. So used to using it. So almost forget how awesome it is sometimes. So for now, I'm just mainly working on one value, just to map out the main part of the back alley here. And I want to, before I continue, I want to sort of close it here. Just gonna add these chords a little later. So we have an opening. I use my automatic selection because I want to do a selection now on this part. I invert that and I make a new layer underneath, which I'm filling with slight brighter value. So now right away you feel the back alley. I'm gonna blur that 4% or about 4%, because with automatic selection you get these really hard edges on, so I'm just blurring it a tad so you see that it's a little soft now. If I didn't do that, it looks like this, and it's, you know, rock hard edge. So I always, when I used automatic selection and filled it, I always blur it between 3 and 4%. Gives a more natural edge. Without becoming too soft. So it's kind of like anti-aliasing or anti-aliasing. Yeah, my English isn't perfect, but I hope it's understandable. I alpha lock that layer now. Now you can actually make this layer a clipping mask of that one. A clipping mask layer means that whatever you draw in this one will only show with layer content of this part. It's a horrible way of describing it. Let me just show you. If I draw this now, and it wasn't a clipping mask, it would cover that part as well, but because it's a clipping mask, it used this layer as a mask for what it's showing here, which is an awesome way of using it instead of just plain masks, because if you use masks, you burn a layer or you spend a layer on the mask. With this one, you don't. There's no separate masking layer, because you can still use this very efficiently to draw in. Okay, so I'm gonna have a new layer on top here where I add some chords and stuff. And if you've seen my artwork before, you know that I love this. You know, I almost have no painting without some sort of wires hanging around. But I think they're so efficient. It's kind of like the trees in a landscape. I'm gonna alpha lock this part and go a bit darker with the airbrush on the part that's a bit closer to us. So it's kind of hazing out towards the center of the image, and I do the same with the background I just filled, so it gives this natural fall off of light, so it's darkest closest to us. Which again makes this alley feel more believable. So I'm switching between these layers now, and I'm going in with the round brush. And the round brush is also excellent for just putting in a specific value, because it's kind of like a filter. You can just add one value. If I press harder, it's another value. But it's without any detail. It's without any texture. So you can really just focus on the value. And if you draw and lift your pencil for each time, you're gonna also get stripes or details if you want. But if you just paint it in one stroke, it's gonna be fine. I'm watching the time now. It's about 5 minutes left, and I really noticed that it's quicker than when explaining stuff than when I'm just painting alone. Like, oops, I thought I have more time. Okay, and maybe we have just some tiny detail, new background layer. I'm just gonna put in just some small detail out there, just so you get a feel that it's, you know, maybe a chimney, or that it is something there. It's not just open nothingness. Maybe a slant. Maybe there's like, yeah, we do that on a separate layer, like a light pole. Alpha lock on, or not alpha lock, but drawing assist. Maybe with some signs on. I'm gonna turn this even darker actually. The not that one, that one. The initial sketch. Also the light pole. So I have a new layer here now where I started to do the chords and stuff. So that's kind of like the new detail layer. I kind of wanted to play around with maybe some sunlight coming in here. I'm not gonna do that in that layer, sorry. I'm gonna make a new one, which is clipping masked on that one. And brighter tone. So let's say that in here the sun is coming diagonally in like that. And it's always nice to do that in a separate layer, because you that way you can like chisel in and out of your details. Like that part can be in sun, and then this part can be in shadow, and you can erase without, you know, being afraid of losing detail on the layer behind. Just some nice, so this is just a hard sun hitting. Something like that. And I want to have some bounce light and stuff. So I went back to the other layer here, which is where the chords and stuff are. I actually would need to put some light on those things as well then. If I want to, you know, it's all artistic freedom. But a little bit of that actually helps. And now on my background layer here, I'm gonna go in with the airbrush and just get some soft bounce light here and there. Because of that sun coming in, it's gonna bounce, picking brighter colors that will hit a little here and there. Maybe I'm gonna have some really close up. 15 minutes over. I'm gonna add a few things here, just to kind of feel like I'm closing it in a bit. So this is on a separate layer. So I'm making that darker and maybe, you know, blurring it a bit, so it's a bit kind of closer to us. Don't feel like that really worked. Maybe just like this. And now, just for the character, need to have a character. Maybe a little girl. Drawing it super small like that can be a bit, you know, then the thumbnail part is a bit in your way. Then draw it bigger and scale it down like I did on the separate one. Or zoom in, maybe like this, you know, just to a more vacant area in the drawing. So maybe she has a backpack on, she's looking into the alley. And we can alpha lock that and give her some Not gonna do like much detail on her, but just a little. So she is still like a thumbnail size, you know, she's still like, on my screen she's still small, so it still kind of counts as a thumbnail. We're not gonna see her legs. I think she's gonna stand behind that garbage bin or whatever it is. I'm gonna put her there in the layer stack, and now, and again, just putting unlocking her alpha, just to put like a dot here and there. So that, why isn't that working? Brush, a dot here and a dot there. Ah, that's better. So warp to maneuver the whole scene, freeform to actually move her. Turn off magnetic, it's easier to just see. If I put her head on the horizon line, it means that we are at the same height of her eyesight. So the camera is at the same height above ground as her eyes. I'm gonna actually move the light pole a little, give her some more space, and then move her a little more into the scene. And clamp her values a bit like up with the bright tones, down with the dark, just to make her silhouette a bit more blending in. So she's very small now, but she still kind of reads as a person. If I turn off the perspective. A couple of more tricks just to show you here, which is very quick, is to have like a vignette. So I put a new layer in soft light mode, and I have a brush down here, which is just a vignette. And I have on Gumroad, I have tutorials, and a brush tutorial with 17 different brushes, and most of the ones that I use now, actually. So now I can decide that it goes a little darker on the sides, and I think that if I turn that down like that, that helps a lot. And then you can do the opposite. On a new layer, you can tap with the soft one on the bright mode. So it doesn't look that good now, but if I scale it, so this can be both light, but also like dust and atmosphere, smoke, whatever. You can also paint this with the airbrush. And it's way too much now, but I can either have it on normal, scale it down just to add a bit like this, or to put it into a different layer mode like add, and it makes it much brighter. Screen works the same as normal if it's pure white, but if it's other colors, then you get different results. Or lighten, which is also a cool layer mode, but maybe something like that. And I see one little, no, this is a bit more than 15 minutes now, but because I'm busy talking as well, so maybe some of that sun is also hitting her. Makes her pop a bit more. Okay. Georgie, are you still there? Is there any questions or anything? Yeah? I hear you typing there in the background, so... Yeah. Cool. I'm gonna put this into a group now. And... well, we already gone for... is it 5 to... we already went for 55 minutes now, did we? Yeah. Is there a locked time on this? Should it be within 1 hour, or? I'll do one more thumbnail, and then... it would be cool if there was some wishes, some thumbnail wishes. Is there any thumbnail wishes out there? I'm gonna start with putting up a perspective. Maybe a 2-point, but a pretty wide one. I'm thinking Cityscape. Let's do a 3-point perspective. Cityscape is one of the things that takes a lot of time. So let me just show a thumbnail of a cityscape, because, you know, it's the groundwork, you know, it's the... like, this isn't a finished sketch, but it can be a start on something that can end up being a finished piece of art. Yeah, outdoor is cityscape, right? That's what... oh, okay. Okay. Well, put a roof on this one, and it's an interior. Okay. Well, let's do a little city, but also with a mountain. Like, maybe a village more than a city. Okay, I'm gonna start my timer now. So I'm just gonna map out a little city. So a couple of buildings that are just, you know, actually reaching above horizon. So maybe here is a street. So you see, it's very... I start out really rough. Just a doodle brush, just to, you know, dot in here and there. And these are buildings, as you can see. No, you probably can't see that there are buildings just yet, but to me they are. Even if they're really rough. It's just, you know, you can almost just squint with your eyes to kind of tell. So we're gonna have a big mountain behind here as well. And then maybe we're up on a hill looking down at this. Yeah, let's do that. And then the ocean, and then the sunset, and then the... oh. Let's see what we have time for. I'm gonna stay within 15 minutes on this one. Working fast. Something about being playful as well, you know, don't be too strict, just fiddle about, dot down some stuff, do some lines and stuff that doesn't make sense, but it doesn't matter. it gives your artwork richness, even though you're just playing about, you know, use some different brushes, maybe the round brush, maybe there's like a dome over here, and also with this quick shape, it's so cool in Procreate. You can make perfect circles suddenly, or, you know, cylindrical shapes. I'm gonna have a, you know, it's now very rigid, but a few things that are great with cityscapes or cities that break up a city, because you're not gonna see the wires this far out, but you're gonna see the trees, and the trees are awesome for, you know, giving detail, breaking up the hard edges. It's okay. It's important to not spend too much time on each part now, because I know I'm gonna have like a foreground. Like, I'm gonna use the rull. Like, there's gonna be maybe like a little hill we're standing on top of here. That also has some trees, of course. Some organic things. Trying not to do too much. If I did too much city detail now, it's kind of typical that you don't want to draw trees on top of that city, because you like how the city turned out, and then you kind of boxed yourself in. So, you know, do kind of loose sketches on each thing you want to add to your scene. Don't go too far, even on the thumbnail. It's nice to just have it sketchy in the beginning, just so you can draw something over it without, you know, start crying because you're covering up your own detail. I'm alpha locking this now, and then I'm adding some brighter bush and tree detail. I was thinking to have kind of like not sure if it's a road or a path, or, you know, something that's stopping. Maybe there should be like a fence here. So that you just don't fall off. It's like a viewing point here. You can look over the city. And so I don't forget it, I'm gonna actually put in the character now. Or maybe the characters. Maybe it's like a couple standing there. And again, I'm drawing it not where I'm gonna have it, but just somewhere where I actually see it. And I know it's not that much time left on the live paint, but keep asking questions, people, if you have questions. Maybe has a hand on the railing of the fence. Not sure what the correct word would be. So, scaling that down. I'm gonna zoom in a little just to put them in the right spot. So there we have the the viewpoint. Just want to erase a little on that fence. Thought it became a little... I'm onto detail now, which I shouldn't be, but... yeah, something like that. Yeah, go ahead. Well, it's not a quick answer, but check out my tutorials for that, because I often start with the curves, going into curves in each layer, pushing them in a direction of color that I want, and then using new layers on top to add color and detail. But I would like, when the thumbnail is done, then adding color is the next step. So you don't, I wouldn't want to detail in value and then start coloring, because then it's just so much more work going from value to color. Go to color early, but make get your thumbnail done first, in just value or color. Like, I would do both actually. I'm used to using value to begin with, but it's a good advantage if you also do color. But doing just value in the beginning makes you just need to focus on that. It's a bit easier than focusing on color and detail and everything at the same time. So that's why I do value first, because it's the most important part. Good value can always trumps. Like, you can save a picture that has shitty color with good value, but not vice versa. I would say, like, it all depends on what you're used to, but it's so easy to get hung up in color in the beginning if you're starting with that. So I would definitely say value first, but you don't have to go really far in value. Do the 15 minutes thumbnail in value, and then you can start implementing color. Because if I also gone too far sometimes, and I'm like, it's so detailed, and now I have to start using color, and that can be a bit of a pain actually. So I'm just keep adding some value. I have a mountain now, which is also my background, sort of. You know what? I'm gonna merge the foreground here. Let's do nighttime. We have 4 minutes left. I'm gonna go nighttime on this. So put the sky somewhere in the middle and then darken everything else. So you see, I'm using both the curves, but also curves you get more control of how you go darker. So I'm actually on the layer way behind here. I'm gonna put in the moon. It's a bit big. It's nice to have a round brush to make a moon. And then I'm gonna smudge a little like that. So it's a nice, some cloud detail. Then the airbrush, just to give it a little glow. You can almost go darker than the ground as well, but it would make sense with the mountains. So I'm gonna go there. And now let's get some light in the city. Just gonna darken a little. Closing it in a bit here. And alpha lock the city. Just getting it some darker values on that as well. It depends. Like I use the eraser when I need to, you know, when I keep chiseling on the silhouette, for example. But if it's on the, if it should be brighter value, you can't just use the eraser because then it has to be brighter value on the layer you have behind, and maybe that doesn't make sense. So the eraser is for erasing, but you know, you can use it for that as well, but just to add light, I would much rather add light actually than erase, and then need to have a layer behind that has a brighter value. Maybe that's not the way to go in your drawing. I'm gonna pick the ink brush here and that too. Add some city lights. Yeah, maybe duplicating and then blurring a bit just to get that little glow. Yeah. So that's a quick sketch on that. So key is to find your composition and see if, you know, the thumbnail is the foundation. It's the brick foundation of whatever it is you're gonna build up. And if you have a strong foundation, a good thumbnail, you know, you have it's only details left basically in color. But if you start out on a weak foundation, if your thumbnail is weak, then there's no point continuing, because whatever you do on top, it's still going to be built on a weak foundation. And yeah, I much rather have a good solid thumbnail, which is quick to do, keep it small, credit card size, or up to maybe a small phone, not the S, not the iPhone X, are they? The big ones. But, you know, keep, yeah, exactly. The smaller you keep it, the quicker it is to do. But, of course, this small would be impossible almost to do anything in. So you need to have a certain size to be able to actually do something. But, yeah, I think that was it for this time. Keep doing, you know, thumbnails, and it's also a good way to warm up. To draw is almost, it's like any sports. Your first ones on that day will not be your best ones, so it's nice to get a few sketches out of the way just to be nice and warm and you know, get the good ones. Okay, Georgie, should we wrap it up, or any last questions or so? Yeah? No, I think that's fine. Maybe yeah. Yeah. Cool. I guess I'm the only one hearing you, Georgie, so if anybody's wondering who I'm talking to, it's Georgie Green from Savage. So I have her on the phone, on the headphones while I'm talking. There's a certain delay, a lot of technical stuff. But anywho, hope you got something out of this, and have fun, keep on drawing, and until next time.